So, Joe Velazquez, does anybody actually call you Joseph?
No, my mom does. That's it.
Does she hate when people call you Joe?
No, I mean, she's okay with it. It's just weird when it's Joey.
Yeah.
That's my uncle, and
It's like different.
It's
not
my
you.
girlfriend called me Joey once, and I was so confused. I was like, well, no, we're not doing this.
I'm not Uncle Joe.
I'm not Uncle Joe.
Do not call me that.
Don't do that.
Oh, man. So, quick introduction, as I've done on all these podcasts, just to give the world a little bit of a better understanding, or the 50 people that maybe listen to this thing, a better understanding of who you are. Joe Velazquez is a field research analyst with CBRE, tracking office and industrial properties in South Carolina, tracking lease comps, developments, sales, and tenants in market. He has been with the firm for 2 years, this coming February, and before that did a short stint with a brokerage firm in Philadelphia, and is a graduate of the College of Charleston, and with a degree in commercial real estate finance.
Thank you.
Joey Velazquez. Welcome to the show.
Not glad to be here now.
Wonder if your uncle actually listens to this. That'd be fantastic.
That would be good.
Oh my gosh, dude, we've actually known each other for probably 4 months now, 5 months now.
Yeah.
And got to know each other through local events and friends. Actually, an individual that I work with introduced us to each other, Sean.
Yes.
And so we've gotten to know each other over the past 4 or 5 months, just at local events, and I didn't really know much about you until recently. And grabbed a cigar, and the rest is history. Joey.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for bringing me on. Yeah, like 5-6 months ago, I thought we were just gonna walk by and be like, hey, business development guy.
Yeah. Just another sales guy.
Just another sales guy. Wanted to talk and try to do deals and not get them done. But
and nothing ever happened. That's just one more guy that I had to talk to and see at every event and not enjoy talking to.
No, and well, here we are now. Finally got to actually dive in, talk a little bit more, and then grab a cigar and actually talk not about what we have work wise, but everything else.
Everything life related.
Yeah, and that was good to be a part of.
I love it. So that's a quick bio on yourself. We delved pretty deep last week into you as an individual and your background and really what's most important to you. So let's give the actual true Joe Velazquez background, aside from the bio. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so born and raised here in Charleston. Ended up at Wando High School. I'm actually a band kid, so if you saw me playing trombone 10 years ago, I don't play anymore.
Did not know that.
No.
What other instruments did you play?
I can actually play euphonium, trumpet, saxophone, and that's about it. So.
Would you consider yourself a band nerd?
10 years ago, yeah. No, I don't say that anymore. It was only recently my girlfriend found out. And she almost broke up with me after that. I was like, ooh, dang.
Did you withhold that information for some reason?
Well, yeah. You have to.
That's super cool, though. I mean, how many people, honestly, not many people I know even still play instruments. Oh. And those that do, I'm always like, that's incredible, because I used to play cello and piano as a kid, but
really?
Could not play cello or piano to save my life now. Completely lost it. Completely lost it.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I haven't played it in a little bit.
Yeah.
If you give it to me and give me 2 months, 3 months to get back on the feet,
yeah,
I can be good. I don't know if it's the same for cello or piano. I don't play either of those.
So I feel like I could pick up cello quicker than I could pick up piano, personally.
Yeah.
Just because I played cello longer.
How long did you play?
Through 6th grade. And I was second chair, so pretty damn good at cello.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I realized that none of the cool kids actually play cello, and so I moved away from it. But looking back on it, I wish I would have stuck with it. That's one of the things I regret about elementary school. It's one of the things I regret. It's weird to say. Elementary school and middle school, it's I wish I would have stuck with instruments well through high school.
Right.
Because once you stop playing, obviously you lose it pretty quick. Mm-hmm. Just like anything.
Yeah,
but
no,
it's pretty quick.
I played trombone all the way through college. I was at CFC, College of Charleston pep band, so I was at every single game for almost 4 years. Went to San Diego with the team, went NCAA tournaments. You know, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
If you stuck with it, it's great. It's just another thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I always used to think that, so like the Citadel guys that would travel to band would travel to Scotland to play there every couple of years. I always thought that was super cool.
I was gonna say, it's one of those things where like, they're weird. They play instruments, and then you're like, oh, they go places.
They go on the
and
fun
they do
trips.
things.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had way more fun on a band trip than I've had any other trip. So,
What makes band trips more enjoyable?
we're just more willing to let loose. There's no time frame on getting back to the hotel.
Yeah.
You're just like, don't get arrested.
Yeah.
Only happened once. Not me, but you know, that was it.
So Joe's actually a felon.
Yeah.
No.
No.
Joking. Awesome. So, past the instrument, what else? From Charleston, played instruments.
Played instruments. I actually took 3 years off of college.
Okay.
I graduated high school, didn't know what I was going to do. 3-year gap right there. Trident Tech, which is local community college here. Did that for a little bit on and off. Joined, did a couple different jobs, Boone Hall, and Patriots Point aircraft carrier. Did that for a little bit, and then I ended up deciding I wanted to go to college. Jumped in, had no idea what to do. Thought I'd actually major in like business admin or historic preservation. Walked by a table and it was I think a major fair. They're like, "What do you want to do?" I was like, "I don't know." And this one woman, Lane Warzala, was like, "Hey, well, why don't you just come to our club?" It was the real estate club. I was like, "Okay, a little interested. Let me come." And been doing that ever since. And that was pretty much day 3 of college career, and picked the major right after that and stuck with it for 4 years. And did that right after. Graduated in the middle of COVID. So that was a toss up on what I was going to do actually.
Yeah.
'Cause you always go to college to do something, and then once you go to the real world, it's different experience.
Yeah.
So kind of toyed around with ideas. Went to Philly, did a short stint with brokerage there. Tried my hand at multifamily sales, smaller apartment units, and there, and didn't work out. Ended up coming back home, tried to figure out what to do. Actually, that same woman, Elaine Warzala, introduced me to the managing director of CBRE here in South Carolina.
Cool.
They just happened to have a field research position open. She thought I'd be good at it. Threw my resume his way.
Ends up she was right.
She was right. Love it. It's been my favorite job I've ever had. And got hired, and been there ever since. And now I do office and industrial properties. I track both of those, and do that throughout the whole state.
So we were talking about this last time, but you are probably one of the first research analysts that I've ever met that loves networking more than most salespeople do.
I will say I do like networking.
Yeah.
It's fun to get out there, and it's interesting. A lot of analysts don't like networking,
Right.
and at least on the research side, they may come for 5 minutes,
Right.
just to say hi and bug out, and then that's it for them. I like to actually stick around, and I do pretty much at least 1 to 2 networking events a week.
Yeah. Do you think it benefits you going to, not just from meeting people, but like from a true research perspective? Do you think it provides you better insights that they're not getting by not meeting with people?
Better insights. I mean, you learn things you have to meet people.
Yeah.
Once you meet people, that's kind of where networking starts, and that's kind of where research starts.
Right.
I was at an event yesterday, Metro Chamber of Commerce, and I just happened to be there with a bank. They invited me just to sit next to them at the event, and some of their other clients on the other side of the table I just got to talking with. They did a development down here, and just got to talking to them and figuring out what they're working on, which is great because that's not in publications. That's
Right.
not in anything I can read, newspaper or online, and that's kind of where you get that feedback. And it's great because if you have those conversations with people, it's just you're coming in a lot more knowledgeable.
Right. I feel like nowadays every human interaction is referred to as it's anecdotal, right? Everybody's now like, oh, that's anecdotal because you've had those 2 or 3 conversations. And for me, I'm like, well, I had those conversations, and on top of the data that I reviewed, it seems like it provides that just additional assurance to help me make a better decision, right? I've now had those 2, 3, 4, 5, hopefully a lot more conversations than that, but it helps me better understand, okay, that actually does align with what the data say. Whereas I feel like a lot of people will read something, they'll review something, they'll see a headline, we can talk about that all day long, but like they'll see a headline, they're like, oh, well, that's what well, I'm not going to get into it, but of course that's the direction that things are going, and you're like, well, I tend to like not hear that when I'm in public, when I'm having conversations with people. So is that actually true or not? So do you think it's helpful in that regard too, where you read the data and you're like, okay, but this is what my local sources are telling me.
There's a backstory. Yeah. There's always a backstory, and there's always a reason people are doing things. And I mean, what's the story with developers? They want to develop and make a lot of money. That's the name of what they do, and it's not like that. I mean, they want to put out. You could almost classify it as art. They're putting a building up that's going to be lasting for how many years? It's kind of like an art form.
Yep.
You're also filling a need at that point. You can throw up an apartment building in Charleston, and you can make it look pretty good, which gets a lot of people like, okay, yeah, I like this. And then depending on rents and how it fills up, you can also fill the need of like people need more places to live.
Right.
I mean, before 2030, the city of Charleston wants to put up 3,500 affordable housing units.
Right.
I mean, if we're just coming in and doing something like that, which is on the table, I mean, you're helping out.
Is a lot of that affordable housing, and I read about it all the time, is a lot of that replacing current like Section 8 housing, or is that going in other locations?
Currently in Charleston, especially downtown, what they're doing is replacing.
Okay.
So not only are they changing it from that, post 60s, what we understand as Section 8 housing / affordable, it's a much different world. Whereas now we're actually building units, and we're not calling it like affordable. We're calling it mixed income, and we're replacing what was existing. We're adding more units, and we're mixing it up. So there are going to be some market rate units in there, and then there are some people who, are firefighters who may not make the 80, 90,000 it takes to actually afford a market rate.
Yeah. I feel like I've heard this all the time from people that like lived in Seattle or they lived in big cities, and they come into Charleston, and they express this need for a true affordable housing. But I feel like mixed is kind of it's like a better way to approach it, right?
Mixed is a better way. It's the new thing, and most companies that are coming out and doing it are doing that. They're not doing the wide open fields of grass and small buildings. It's now looking more like traditional apartments that you would see in a city, the 5-6 stories. We're seeing that now, and I think that's you're creating an ambience not only as you're standing on the street, but in the actual unit.
Right.
You're safe. It's it's a home, and that's what you want.
Well, I feel like if you, and once again, just an opinion, if you build something that looks completely different than everything around it, and you say this is for those that can't afford, right? Then you immediately put them into a different location, regardless of how nice it is. If it's completely separate, it's like, hey, this is for you, and this is for the other people. If you don't allow people to mix in, then they feel like left out, and then therefore you start to create problems by separating individuals in those units. Maybe that's the approach of mixed, is to try to avoid that moving forward.
Yeah,
Is that
I mean,
kind of the approach?
You want the best tenant possible, and the best tenant possible is not going to be, if you put it in one section and say, this is it, this is the only people, or these are the only people that can rent this unit, they're going to be a certain type of people. And that's not what you want in a community. You want different kinds of people. You want, the higher earners. You want the lower income. Not saying that you necessarily want, you know, like crime and such,
Yeah.
but that's what you're helping to avoid by having mixed income properties.
I've always heard the argument that people will say, oh, we want affordable housing, we want affordable housing, we want affordable housing, and then they'll say, but not near us, right? I've heard that so many times. You know, like, it sounds so good, but then they'll say, I don't want it near me because it's going to bring my house or my condo value down.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds terrible, but it's like
that's the stigma.
Hear all the time.
That's what you hear. That's what I hear. That's what, you know. And we both live in Mount Pleasant, and that's one of those areas that if you bring in affordable housing, I have a friend who's working on a project like that in Mount Pleasant, and the feedback that he's gotten is exactly what you just said. And it doesn't help anybody. And I think, you know, we kind of need to move past that stigma, but we need to figure out exactly how we're doing it.
Absolutely. So let's dive into CBRE. I had heard of CBRE before getting into construction and into this space, but not super familiar with the company as a whole. You gave me a little bit of background before, but just for those who are listening in, tell us a little more about CBRE as an organization, and just a little bit more about the day-to-day life of Joey Velazquez. Your mom's gonna be like, why does he keep saying that? Why did you even tell him that?
Don't worry, I won't share it. No, so CBRE is one of the world's largest real estate firms. We are in the brokerage world. We are in property management. We have Turner and Townsend, which does a lot of developments for us. They are kind of an offshoot. We're just one of the biggest dogs that you can have in the courtyard, and we compete with companies like JLL and Cushman and Wakefield. Avison Young is one of the smaller shops that we compete with, but that's kind of the wheelhouse that we're in. We're one of the largest firms. I'm happy to be on the South Carolina team with, right here in Charleston. We have 3 offices here, and we have, I think, essentially an office in almost every country at this point. We're a global company, and again, we're one of the biggest.
Cool. So when you say you're one of the biggest, what all does CBRE cover? Obviously, and you might not be able to name all of the different branches of the company, but if you could just kind of provide us a little more of like what all CBRE covers.
Right. So we are a brokerage company. We have about 115,000 employees worldwide, and part of that we have about 9,000 sales agents who are, your typical brokers. They're out there, they're doing leasing, they're doing sales, they're, that's what they're here for. We also have an arm for property management, and they're out there at least managing all the properties that we either sell or lease. And hopefully we're one-on-one with both of those companies, or both of those platforms. Another one is project management. So ground up, development. We work with a lot of clients that do that, and they need a team that they can support, or at least, feel that they are supported by, and that's another avenue that we can actually offer.
Got it. Wonderful. So we talked earlier, and we've been discussing this a lot as we've seen each other over the past few months, but just trying to better understand the markets in general and what direction things are going in. So customer sentiment is a big part of that conversation, and as kind of mentioned, we wanted to talk a little bit more about customer sentiment on the end user side of things, and also on like the developer side of things as well. Right. So let's kind of dive into that a little bit. What are you seeing in the markets right now?
So to further know what we're saying, we have the tenants that are typically the end consumer. We work with both tenants in the format of they want space or they need their space subleased. Yeah. We also work with owners who, of course, they want their space leased out. So in terms of what they're wanting, it's a big gap, and it's getting smaller as time progresses, especially on the industrial side of things. COVID came in, had a really big impact, disrupted at least what happened here in Charleston, where you couldn't find any space available. Now we're kind of on the other end of it, where we have too much space available, and landlords have to offer concessions. They have to offer that free rent. They have to offer better TI. They have to offer packages and all of that.
What is TI?
Tenant improvements. So that's where, you offer X amount of money for them to actually get upfitted and into the suite.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. So it makes sense with COVID and office space specifically.
Right.
Are you seeing a lot of that office space being transformed into something else? Are you seeing a lot of land property owners taking that property and then retrofitting it for some other purpose or repurposing it for some other use? Or are you seeing them provide immediate concessions just to try to keep people there?
It used to be, I think, immediate concessions in the terms of, and I'll speak only on the Charleston, South Carolina market, just because that's what I work in. So other markets, Philly, New York, they have conversions. They have a bunch of different aspects to theirs. But at least in Charleston, I can say that it used to be concessions. People were moving out. They were reevaluating their office space needs.
Yeah.
Now we're coming back. More people are just naturally in the office. That's kind of my sentiment. I'm in the office every single day, as most of my coworkers are.
Right.
And even though I can work hybrid, and I know a lot of other people that can as well, they're in the office. And so I think it's kind of switched over to where we're having more people in the office. More landlords see that. They're starting to push rents. Downtown Charleston Class A office space, we're now at 10% vacancy, which is really healthy comparative to what it's been the last few years. And there's not much in conversions in terms of office going to multifamily, and it's just not a thing here. So we are seeing those spaces that are older, Class B and C. Those tenants say, hey, well, I want a Class A. I want something new. I want to be in a great address, and they do it.
Right.
So that leaves Class B and C, a little bit less. No one wants it. So what is actually happening now is they have to go in, they have to upfit it, they have to make it Class A. That's the only way you're going to get that space leased. And there's a couple projects that I know that's what they're doing.
How do they delineate? I kind of get the general picture, but between Class A, B, and C.
It depends. Every market has different avenues of approaching it, but in Charleston, it's going to be the brand new office space, probably the last 5-6 years. If it was either a developed, brand new spec space, or if it was a totally redone project. There's a project in downtown that was on the, closer to the neck of the peninsula, a little bit away from, all the hustle and bustle, but that project was completely redone. It was a former warehouse, and it's, now Class A office space.
So it went from probably a C to an A because of the renovation.
Because of the renovation.
So a lot of the Class C that we see in more rural areas, frankly, that could you build a Class B that becomes a Class C pretty quick? Could you build a Class C that stays a Class C, or would you build it as Class A? It would become a Class B, Class C pretty quick, depending upon the location. Is that kind of right?
It depends. Not a lot of people are actually building building office at the moment. If you are building office, you're building Class A, and you're building it in. Right now in Charleston, there's not a lot of it being built. There's, I think, one building that is considered Class A office space. You go to other markets, Philly, as an example, they're not doing any Class A. They're not.
Right.
It's just. It's there. They're doing conversions, but that older supply is just changing, and it's just very weird market to market.
Yeah.
But again,
so there's no definition for ABC.
It's gonna have to be that.
Yeah.
What's brand new, and upgraded.
Got it.
That's what I would maintain as Class A.
Got it.
If you carry in an actual fob, and you buzz in and out. Like
if you're using modern technology.
If you're using modern technology, that's closer to Class A.
Got it.
If you're actually having to turn a key, you're going down. Yeah, you're going down.
What are you doing?
I mean, it's
upgrade your building now.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird now to like. I mean, I got in a car the other day and the guy turned it on with a key, and I was just like, whoa.
Hold on, buddy.
Hold on. Is this 2010?
Isn't that sad though? It's like how quick. Well, it's cool, but it's also like, man, like things have changed so quick.
It's so quick. It's.
And I feel like I'm in my 20s. I think
I'm 28.
Yeah, so we're both 28. So
I'll
I feel
be
like
29
in our like 28 years of life, when are you 29?
Next month. So.
December.
Oh. All right.
Wow, so close.
Yeah.
Are we in November yet? So it's October 30th today?
30th. Halloween's tomorrow.
Wow.
Scary.
Halloween is tomorrow. Spooky season. Yeah, I feel like things have rapidly changed in our lifetime. And I think of this all the time because you consider like time frames, right? Our time frame between being born and then obviously elementary, middle school, high school, then college, and then COVID, it was like, and then life just changed dramatically.
Yeah.
But there's been rapid progressions in technology and specifically AI, which has changed everybody's lives dramatically and will continue to do so, even more so than ever before in the next few years. I think about, my thought process around going into work, right? I always thought, I'm going to graduate college, I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to be in the office somewhere.
Right.
I didn't want that to be the case forever, but I was like, I believe that work is done with people, around people in an office. And then COVID hit, and I was working from home, and I was working from behind my computer. And frankly, I was miserable. I was like, this is not what I thought I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. Why am I behind my computer all day long in my spare bedroom at my house? But this is not what I saw work as. I saw work as a collaborative thing. And so it is. And in order for things to progress, frankly, it needs to be a collaborative effort. And people, have, to a certain degree, we kind of lost that during COVID. And now we've regained that. But I always thought, at the very beginning of COVID, I was like, we get to go home for work, and like, we're going to be working from home, and come to the office, this is going to be great. 2 months into that, I was like, I need to be back in the office. I want to be around the team. I want to be talking about projects. And so we're definitely seeing this shift back to, it's nice to be hybrid. It's nice to have the opportunity and the option to go home. But I also really feel like I thrive around people and being around and having these conversations more so than I do just working from behind my desk at my house, which some people are really good at that.
No,
really good.
I'm not. I had a phone call the other day, and the girl was talking about how she is remote, and that's what she does, and she's great at her job. She covers a couple different offices for our firm, and I was like, that's awesome. Like that's not me though. I like I said beforehand, I like to be networking. I like to be out. I like to talk to everyone in the office. I mean, it's nice to come in and say hi to our office team or our industrial team, and just also pick their brain. It's a lot more awkward to call someone on Teams, in my opinion, to ask a quick question than it is to just stand up, go to their desk, ask them whatever, and that's kind of the feedback I need to get.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thought about it today too, because I was in the office all day long. I don't enjoy that either. I don't enjoy like having to be in the office all day long. It was more so just a lot of meetings throughout the day, sort of situation.
And that was out of the office. You were out.
I was in the office.
In the office, talking to people. In
meetings, couple hours, spare hours in between, sort of situation.
Gotcha.
My day was typically jumping around. It's like you're in the office a little bit, you're out of the office. You're at events, you're going to coffee, meeting with different individuals, going to a project, all the above. But today I was in the office all day long. And I was like, I don't like that either. I was like, I like a mixture of the two, but I do 100% now understand why we have office space. It's like I get it.
Well, no, it's why do you think a lot of people who are hybrid like at least going into year 2 or 3 of the pandemic.
Yeah.
All those guys ended up getting like co-working space.
Yeah.
They were out of the house.
Yeah.
I know a guy who has a 2-bedroom apartment, and his spare bedroom was his guest / office.
Yeah.
Just didn't work for him anymore. He just went, even though he was fully remote for a company out of New York and and lived here.
Right.
He just still decided to go get a co-working space, and that was kind of his happy medium, where if he wanted to work at home, he could do it, or if he just wanted to be out in the office, quote unquote, co-working.
Yeah.
He could do it, and I think it's a happy medium. I mean, your happy medium is kind of similar, where I don't think you want to be in the office all day, but you also don't want to be out of the office all day.
Yeah, I think I'm weird in this sense, but I like talking about work all the time. Like I'm the kind of guy that like I enjoy talking about work and like connecting it to my life all the time, and it's a part of it. And I want to be working, but I don't want to be confined. It's like I don't want to be confined to a cubicle to have to do my work on a daily basis, but I want to have access to that cubicle to be able to communicate with my colleagues if need be. But it is enjoyable for me to be discussing work on a consistent basis, whatever that may be, right? Having a cigar and discussing work, having a drink and discussing work, doing a podcast and discussing things that we work on.
Right.
We're builders. Like we like to do things. We don't want to be sitting stagnant and not doing anything.
No. So I was gonna say there are times you need to hunker down and do your work and be at the office and maybe pop AirPods in, and that's what you do.
Yep.
But then I like going to networking events after hours, and then also before work. I've gone to networking events that are, say, at our local, our club for business networking.
Right.
They do, like Fridays.
Are you part of the Harbor Club?
No. I'd like to be. I just
might be something we should join here soon.
Yeah. No. And that was the one I was talking about.
Yeah.
But they host events.
Yep.
And they're before work, and you do your coffees, you do your meetings after,
yep.
And that's the fun part.
Yeah.
I think 50% actually doing the work, and then 50% actually being out and learning and talking to people, and that's how you learn.
Yeah, I just feel like a lot of people try to separate work and life because it's like they have to be separated. And I'm more so, my opinion is more so like you should try your best to integrate them, to enjoy them both, because you're frankly you're built to work to a certain degree, and it is, and you find fulfillment through the work that you do. So you should probably work and enjoy your work, but also, integrate life into that as well, and integrate work into your life as best as you possibly can, and find that there's never a balance of sorts, but try to find your balance.
There's always a balance. Like I know you get home, you're talking to your girlfriend. Sometimes you don't need to talk about work. That's probably where my work-life balance is.
Yep.
However, a lot of my best friends are people I've met either through the industry, or I went to College of Charleston with them, and they're all in real estate. And what do? We go out. We're either on a boat, we're doing something together, we're hanging out.
Come to Charleston
on a Saturday. Yeah, they're all in boats. And the best part of it is, what do?
Yeah.
What project are you working on?
Yeah.
Okay. Who is doing this deal? And that's just what we do. I mean, I don't even think I work technically. I just do this thing.
Yeah.
And it just makes way more sense for me to be doing this than not doing it. And that's kind of how it makes sense in my head.
You also just like align with those people. Like you have the same thing. You are passionate about, or you enjoy the same things. And that's why I found too is the people that I've become closer with over time are the people that I like align with, and I align with them on the things they're most passionate about too. Are you passionate about this kind of work? Sure. Then I probably can have a better conversation with you for a longer period of time. Like we talked the other night for 3.5 hours, right? We kind of not even thinking about it, right?
No,
just continued the conversation.
I didn't look at the watch. We just sat there and we talked, and I think that's kind of the missed thing now. Is like if I go to someone, if I go get coffee with, say, like a CFC student, and they're asking for career advice, and maybe they're not in my wheelhouse, and I could know them, I'm still not going to be, you know, really interested in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's when I watch my phone and I'm like, okay, we've hit our hour mark. I got to go.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, you're in the industry, you're talking to other people, you have those good conversations, and then you're just like, oh, I forgot my phone was on.
Absolutely.
And that's what you kind of want.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, sometimes that's tough. And I'm not, you know, an extrovert, introvert. I think we've discussed this before. You're like a extrovert, introvert in the sense of like you like your alone time.
Don't call me on Sundays. That's just.
I'm the extrovert that doesn't like to be talked to on Sunday.
Yeah,
Do not call me.
Listen, I will go out. I'll do whatever. I will hang out. I will go to the baseball game, go to a soccer game, do whatever.
Yeah.
Sundays I can't. I need my reset time. And I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't go.
You gotta have some
100%.
time to reset. That's for sure. That's for sure.
And then that begs the question: what are you? What were you?
Yeah, I've always been an extreme extrovert until COVID, and I think COVID kind of gave me this reset opportunity.
Okay.
To really reflect on what I wanted. You know, honestly, I say this all the time. If I could be a philosopher and make money as a philosopher, I would be a philosopher. In the sense of, if I could just sit here and think all day long and just write out my thoughts and just share those thoughts, I would do that. Maybe that's what the purpose of the podcast is to a certain degree. It's like to share these thoughts.
Yeah.
But
get some sponsors.
You got to make some money in that too, right? Like there has to be some money at some point. You gotta survive. And so but COVID was like a time for me to do that, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I was extreme extrovert in the sense of I was just go all the time. I'm certainly still that personality, but I like my alone time to like completely decompress. And I don't want to talk to anybody. And it might be a few hours, it might be a full day, but whatever that period of time is, I just don't want to talk the entire time. So definitely an extrovert, 100%. But there's a part of me that likes my don't talk to me time for me to really go internal and think.
But you gotta think. You gotta take that time. It's like a reflect. I mean,
yeah.
People do meditation and yoga, and they take that time. You know, even though they're in a classroom filled with people, they're not listening to other people. They're just doing their thing for the hour. And that's
Speaking of which, yoga is amazing.
Dude, yoga is great.
Yeah,
that's the one thing I think everyone should do. I need to do more of it. I've
only done it like 5 times in my life, and every single time I was like, I feel like I was about to cry. I was like, this is so relaxing. Like I'm about to cry. Like it's super emotional because you get to that point where you're like, I am so relaxed that anything you like, I am just so calm right now, and every emotion is flowing through you. And you're like, what is going on in this yoga session? Right now?
You get about 30 minutes in, and you're just thinking. You're thinking about your day. You're thinking about everything. I mean, how many times and I'll relate this to showers, but you get in the showers, what do? You don't think. And that's, you know, you're not thinking about like what you're doing. You're just thinking in general.
What kind of showers taking, Joe?
Dude, listen, I take warm showers.
And this podcast is over.
But no. But think, like, when you're taking a shower, like you're not.
Yeah,
you're just going through the motions.
Yep.
Because you've done this a million times.
Yep.
And that's kind of, once you get to yoga and you've done all the things, and especially if you do it, you know, more than a couple times, you kind of know what you're expecting, and that's kind of where you're thinking.
Yep.
You're like, they may say, do this pose, and you're doing it, but in the minute that you're doing it, you're thinking, you know, oh, I should have done this or that, and that's kind of my thought is it's nice time to reflect on it, you know, on yourself and think about what your day-to-day is.
100%. So the whole mental health thing has been a huge topic of conversation for a lot of folks on this podcast, and kind of all over the spectrum, in the sense of one individual I had on, Phil Palmer, runs an organization called Warrior WOD, which is Warrior Workout of the Day, and basically focuses on helping veterans to cure their PTSD through working out and movement.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a guy that he's served in overseas and he was a Citadel grad. He's done a lot, seen a lot, experienced a lot. So that's like one aspect of it, right? Where you were trying to actively solve mental health through movement, and I think that's key. Right? I think movement is a huge part of mental health in general. Personally, it's like just move your body, just get out, just keep.
And that's one of the things is like, you know, if you're stagnant all day at the office, even if I go to take like a 30-minute treadmill run or just do something, walk around with my dog, that's a lot better than if I just go home and turn on the TV. It's a lot better mentally, and I think you reflect, and that mental side of it, that's what you want.
Especially if you go home and turn on the TV and you watch news.
You watch news.
Any form of news.
Any form of news. It's
good luck,
dude. I stopped watching all the news, and that's been a lot better. And I mean, if you're not thinking about it, it doesn't exist. Yeah. Which is good. Yeah, and
so he's one of those mental health individuals that I discussed mental health with specifically a couple other people, just guys going through things, right? And I think men and women too, and hopefully I'll have more women on this podcast in the future to discuss the female aspect of things. But I think a lot of men just don't talk about it often enough, where it's like there are things that we need to be doing on a daily basis to help ourselves out. And by moving properly and getting around good people and having these conversations, it doesn't mean that you have to be super emotional with everybody all the time. It just means that talking through things with like-minded individuals is very helpful to help you become more in tune with yourself and help move you in the right direction. And I also found that a lot of this has become purely like self-development, and you have to do these things to be incredible in life. And I've just become so frustrated with that because everybody's different and everybody's approaching life in their own way. Everybody has their own perspective, which will guide you through your life in your own way. You're not in front, you're not behind, you're right where you need to be, and you just gotta keep going, right? So, not to turn this into a mental health podcast by any means, but a lot of guys, I feel like a lot of guys don't need to hear that, because that's one of the biggest things for a lot of folks is just keep going. Just keep moving through it. Yeah. And have these conversations. If you need to go to a therapist, go to a therapist. But then that leads us down the road of, big pharma and pharmaceuticals and all the things that people put on us when we go to the doctor too. And I had that conversation on another podcast as well, where it's like, why is it immediately that you need to be on an antidepressant or on this drug or that drug? There are plenty of things that need to be done, potentially side by side with those things or exclusive.
I agree. And I mean, there's days I feel on top of the world, and I get into the office early, I do my thing, I'm excited for the work day. And then, there's other days where you just wake up and you're like, I didn't want to do this today. This is just, it just, you lay there and you're like, okay, what am I doing? Am I behind in this and that? And you're just like, the thoughts come in. And that's the part of like the mental health that like, it's not fun. Mm-hmm. But, jumping in, doing the therapist, working out, that'll help. Yeah. And I think that's, I appreciate everyone who speaks on that. And I really appreciate your friend who's doing that. That's awesome.
There's a lot of different people that are doing incredible things in that space. I'm definitely not one of them, but I feel like as the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, hey, there's got to be certain things and more that we can talk to help certain individuals that might be listening to this that are trying to figure out where to go. And you always unfortunately hear of that individual that committed suicide or somebody who did, and it is always super difficult to talk about, right? And I'm not sure if we want to go there tonight or not, but I feel like you hear a new story every week, and it's just like, this is super sad. So please find help for those that are listening. Not really sure how we got to this point in this podcast. But for those that are listening, go find help. So.
Yeah, and I will say, I know people who if you don't talk about things, things don't exist for your perspective, but they exist for other people. And that's kind of the thing is, if I'm not talking, and that's why, you check in with everyone, you talk to everyone, you just see what's up, and it doesn't, I like talking about work. That's what we, you and I like to do. We said that. Talk a little about something else.
Yep.
And that's what we all do. I play video games with one of my friends, and that's our time to sit there and gossip and be girls and talk about what's happening. And that's
be girls.
Be girls. I mean, that's
so women are the only ones that gossip. Is that what we're saying here?
No. Take that out. But no, we
guys gossip too. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
For those of you that are listening, they're trying to twist this.
No, and it's our time to like talk and just I'm not saying be emotional, but connect on something that's not business. And, and that's what we do.
Absolutely.
And you do that with everyone else. So
100%. You have to be human. And I have, once again worked in tech, marketing, obviously now construction, a little bit of everything.
Right.
And there's a human element that is like truly missing, in my opinion, from so many different things. And it's like, hey, we are all human first. We're all human beings. And you really can't remove the human element from business and or life because
it's not transactional.
Exactly.
It's a relationship.
Exactly. So becoming more human in your day-to-day life is frankly probably one of the biggest like things you can do to make your life better.
Yeah.
Just become a more human and approach life in a more humanistic manner. Like understand that people are emotional individuals and empathetic individuals and approach life in that way. Probably help you with your sales too.
Yeah.
You
need to be transactional when you need to, but sales is not, especially not in real estate. It's not a transaction. That there's certain there's a transaction part, but that's not that may be like 15%, 10% of it.
Yeah.
You run numbers, that's it. But I'm not going to trust someone to. If I have a building and I need it sold, I'm not going to just go to the first one and say, hey, you offered a good price, you help me do it. It's a relationship. I mean, we're going to be talking, we're going to be doing things. How many times do you hear about clients and brokers going out and doing team shooting or fishing or something else?
Which is something I'd like to address because people always refer to it as like the good old boy system in South Carolina.
Right.
Frankly, in the South in general, it's always referred to as the good old boy system, which I guess in any market it's referred to as the good old boy system.
Right? It's they have their own way of doing it. I mean, the New York City, Philadelphia, DC is much different and it aligns sometimes with what happens here. It's just there's different aspects of it.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that is because of true relationships that were built over time, right?
Yeah.
And if your family has been in this market for hundreds of years, you've probably built pretty good relationships over hundreds of years. And I always thought that was like, oh, that's like an unfair advantage. It's like, but they have built that over hundreds of years. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's truly relationship driven. They trust them to do it properly, which is why they probably win the bigger deals because they've been doing it for hundreds of years.
I mean, if you talk about like Charleston, there's some big names here, or at least for this market, there are certain names that we know here. And if we grew up next door to each other, or our kids just happen to play, baseball together or do something together, and my granddad knows his dad from this time and they grew up in whatever. It's a different world than if in Charleston is a much smaller city. 20, 30 years ago it was a much smaller city, still a small city.
We say that now, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
Yeah, and we'll say the same thing then.
In comparison,
there's 34 people moving to Charleston Metro a day, and
is it like it's like 40 something for Mount Pleasant?
It's higher for Mount Pleasant. I don't know the exact number, so I won't say one, but
it keeps going outwards too.
It keeps going.
Keeps growing.
And that's goes back to the affordability portion that we talked about.
Yeah.
But it's a different world, and the perk of like a New York City or Philly or DC is they're bigger and they have more people, and it's just they kind of also view it as transactional sometimes, whereas like I could just call someone and it doesn't work out in the first 5 minutes. He could be like, okay, well that it didn't work out, next one. Whereas like you go to these networking events, a guy might call me, you know, we don't do a deal together. Now, you know, I see him at another networking event, and then the next, and then it keeps going and going, and that's how you build a relationship. Whereas if you're in New York City, it's just a different world, and you may never see that person again, or you do.
And millions of people.
Yeah, there's 8 million people there. So.
Which is where cold calling in my first sales job was like, you make hundreds of calls a day. You're gonna make as many phone calls as you can possibly make.
Yeah.
And hopefully a percentage of them will work out if you're good at it. But also it's just a matter of making enough phone calls. Whereas here it's similar in the sense of like you have to go wide. We actually talked about this recently though, where it's like you have to go wide, but you also have to go deep with the relationships you've built. Because with those relationships, with the right relationships, if you go deep enough, you'll then be connected to the world. Right. Whereas in New York, you have to go super wide to get to those people.
You got to go super wide because there's also people who have a lot more money who are not going to talk to anybody other than people they've talked to for 30 years.
Yeah.
And everyone I meet here in Charleston, I try to at least hand them my business card. And if I don't get theirs, I say, please reach out. Yeah. If they don't, they don't. And
why do you hand somebody your business card?
Just to make a connection, just so I know someone.
Yeah.
I've had 4 coffees and 2 lunches this week. We're only on Wednesday.
That's wild. That's awesome.
It's wild. It's great. I had one day where I sat at one of the local places, Merck and Mash, and it was, 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., and I just had 3 different meetings, and that's what you do, and that's just the fun part of it.
So Merck and Mash is also my spot too. I feel like we're both there often. I haven't seen you there yet.
And that's weird.
That's a little strange. So we're both there pretty often.
Yeah. Okay.
You sure you're at Merck and Mash? Same Merck and
sure?
Mash? You sure you're the same one? Yeah. But so same thing, and on a weekly basis, and I'm trying to schedule a lot of meetings, coffee related specifically. I feel like lunch is like you eat lunch and you have to like talk through lunch. It's never enjoyable. Like talking over coffee is much easier to do. Or talking over numbers is much easier to do.
The first date's always coffee. And
And regardless if you're meeting with an architect or an engineer or somebody from CBRE or whatever, don't go to dinner. Don't go to eat food, because you eat food immediately on that first date, that first meeting, and it can make things difficult.
Right.
Because what if you order wings?
Yeah, that's a little messy.
It's a little
Trust
messy.
me, I like wings, but I'm not going to eat them with someone that I just met.
You didn't take your girlfriend to wings on your first date, did you?
No.
Crab legs?
Crab legs.
Lobster.
No, it was actually martinis.
Good call.
That was it.
Good call.
But no, you get out there, and it goes back to the relationship. Like I meet someone at some networking event, hand them my business card, we go get coffee, and then it may be like a quarterly thing, or if they're closer to what I do, maybe a monthly talking. I called a guy on the phone yesterday. I haven't talked to him in 3 months. Hey, how's it going? How about we just have lunch and just see how things are? It's just, if you just keep up those relationships, they build.
Yeah. Business card wise, because I feel like a lot of people now are going to like a digital card or getting away from business cards altogether. I still found that handing somebody a physical card means something.
It's more intimate. I can give you we can bump phones or whatever.
I could poke you on Facebook.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, that's what I feel like. It's just like, oh, this is a cool technology, and then in 5 years, I'm still not going to use it. I think it's just nicer to hand out business cards.
Yeah.
I do a business card thing, but I don't hold business cards. If you give me your business card, I'm going to go home, and then the next day, I'm going to take the card, put it in my Rolodex. It's just the sheets with everyone that I've ever met.
Yeah.
It's in there. Then, that's where you are.
I feel like you need a newsletter. You need a Joe Velazquez newsletter.
Trust me, there's a couple hundred people on that list that probably could.
Coming soon.
The
Joe Velazquez newsletter and podcast coming soon.
It's quarterly updates, everyone.
Quarterly updates.
Comes out with the CBRE Charleston market report.
Is that monthly for CBRE?
Quarterly.
Only quarterly.
Only quarterly for the
CBRE
reports.
needs to step it up.
Ooh, I hand out a lot of information, but those reports are
International companies should be able to do a monthly newsletter.
Ooh, I don't. Well, we do. The reports are quarterly. We do a podcast that comes out. It's called the Weekly Take. You should listen to it. It's.
Is that the international or
mm-hmm.
national?
That's the CBRE official one.
Wow,
it's the Weekly Take.
Do they have more than 68 subscribers?
They have more than you. Yes.
How unfortunate is that? for my 68 subscribers, thank you for tuning in to the camera. I honestly though, I hope I don't get above 100 subscribers ever, because it's gonna make it like at some point I'm gonna be like, okay, I've got like maybe a few hundred. It's not gonna be near as fun saying, oh, I only have a few hundred. It's gonna be like, at this point I have 68. It's much more enjoyable saying I have 68 subscribers.
Right.
I'm gonna make fun of myself a little bit.
Yeah. Well, you got to.
Yeah.
Well, then what's next? You hit 100, and then you have to turn your spare bedroom into a studio.
Then I have 100 subscribers. That's lame.
Ooh.
God, we need to stay below 100.
You heard them first, guys.
That's why I have Joe Velazquez on, to keep us below 100.
Keep you below 100. Keep you below 69. It's gonna
exactly. Do not be the next subscriber to this podcast. Oh my gosh, we were talking earlier about staying away from politics, which we're certainly going to do on this podcast.
Right. Okay.
For very apparent reasons, because nobody really cares to hear us talk about politics, first and foremost.
Yep. We're a week away from an election.
Secondly, we're a week away from an election, which this might get released on the 4th, which would be perfect timing.
Ooh. Yeah.
Shall we wait for the 5th?
Nah, the 4th is good.
4th is good. May the 4th.
No, it'll be. May the 4th be with you.
It's not May, so.
But
November the 4th will be with you.
No one will listen if it's on election day. So.
Nobody's going to listen to this, regardless. If anybody gets to this point of the podcast, they're going to be having a heck of a time. But there's no way they get to this point of the podcast.
Yeah.
If they do, amazing. We'll just have to clip that part and put it as a short on YouTube, just so people can be like, "Oh, I saw that part of the podcast." As it relates to the markets being impacted by a certain individual. Frame this question properly. Depending upon the party that gets into office, how will the markets be impacted? What are you seeing? What are you all looking for in regards to what will impact the markets when a certain individual and or party gets elected? I think that's the best way to ask that question.
Right.
I asked it in like 4 different ways, but
yeah.
I'll leave that up to
I
interpretation.
understand.
Yeah.
There's certainly one party that if they get in, there may be some.
We have to specify parties here.
We do. Oh, okay.
Well, can we keep the podcast up if we specify parties? We'll leave it up for interpretation.
Yes. If one party gets in, there's less regulation that I think will happen. I think there's a lot on either the chopping block. There's also that the 2017 tax cuts that potentially could be extended. I think they expire in 2025. But if the next person comes in and extends those, we see that. I mean, in terms of real estate, I think there's a lot of people who appreciate that. They're like, okay, this is good for the pocketbook, and that's what they want. Different candidate.
Sorry, I'm gonna let you finish there.
Okay, different candidate gets in that doesn't get extended, and the corporate tax rate may change, and people, especially depending on how much money you're making, and depending on your asset type and such, in terms of real estate, it might not be the best. But that's what we're up with. And we kind of have to wait, because every time someone gets in, whatever we're thinking, whatever the stock market is thinking, whatever real estate market is thinking, doesn't, we can make all the projections we want.
Yeah.
But until the person gets in, until they actually do tax policy, we won't know. I was at a symposium on Friday, and It was actually the College of Charleston symposium, and they were talking about how, someone, Sam Bankman-Fried, actually, everyone thought that Hillary Clinton was going to get it in 2016, and Trump did in, that year. And he actually bet that Trump would get in, and then he built a whole projection outside of that, thinking that he'd be able to make a lot of money. And we were told that was the single, biggest loss that company ever took.
And then he made billions, and then he went to jail.
Yep, he's in jail. So
with Diddy.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but you said it. So yeah, he's cellmates.
Are they actually cellmates?
That's what I saw.
See, I feel like that's just like a solid headline. I feel like that makes it newsworthy to say, "Oh, Diddy and Sam Bankman-Fried are in jail together." But is that actually true?
I think it's true. I think the New York Post did that.
It's probably a bougie jail.
Yeah, they got couches and baby oil.
I mean, they're playing PlayStation and hanging out.
Yeah, they're like, well, while we're here,
might as well.
Yeah, PlayStation it up
before we get transported to Mars. I mean,
yeah.
Question is, frankly, I think that's one of the biggest. Well, we won't go there on this podcast. There's really no reason for it. But it's quite ridiculous that because of the amount of money you come from, you get a certain kind of treatment in jail. While both of the felonies that these individuals are being charged with are egregious, yet they get plus treatment. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
No reason to go there. I think we're all on the same page. So
yeah.
Nobody really likes either one of these individuals, and frankly, they should both rot in jail. Quite literally for their charges. But
yeah, and I mean, I don't know what their situation is like in the prison, but it should all be the same.
It should all be the same.
Yeah. White collar, whatever you did, it's all in.
You're going to jail.
Yeah.
You're going to jail. We've still billions of dollars from people that's just as bad, in my opinion, if not in some cases worse, because of you're destroying lots of lives.
I mean, there were people who, they put all their money into Sam Bankman-Fried's company, FTX, and it bellied up. And
are you a big crypto guy?
No, I don't. If I can't see it, and if it doesn't, like, it exists digitally, like, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And, like, I can see how companies perform. If you're looking at stocks, you can kind of understand, okay, what are their margins are like? What are, what's happening?
Yeah.
You can understand that stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't understand crypto because it just goes up. And I think what everyone understands from it is, I think everyone talks about how if the world collapsed, crypto's the only thing that would be around because it's the only, and I may be wrong because, I'm not in that space, but it may be the only thing that's not within a country. It's out on its own.
Yeah, that's another podcast altogether.
Yeah,
I think to a certain degree, there's a long conversation that can come from that. I'm a big believer in Web3, blockchain, cryptocurrency, etc. I did attempt to build a company around blockchain and Web3.
Oh, that's right.
But I do believe in what's coming next.
Okay.
However, if you kind of mentioned like if the world collapses, it's like the world collapses, right? Like hopefully that does not occur, right?
Yeah.
So I think we have bigger problems if that's the case. I think it's a good next step in our financial, from like a currency perspective, and I think it will exist as its own asset class. 100%, it already is, and it will continue to exist and grow. In what size, I'm not entirely sure, but I think it will certainly be a part in an asset, a true asset class which we've already seen. The BlackRock, Vanguard, they're already investing.
They're investing in it, and I mean, I think one of the people that I talked to, like they're big into financials,
Mhm.
but they said that they don't exclude it out of their portfolio. They
Yeah.
have 25% real estate, and down the line of what you should have as like
Yeah.
stocks.
Yeah. They're just slowly including it.
I think he was saying that he has it as like a 1% or 2% of his whole portfolio,
Yeah.
and he's like, until it's the biggest thing, and I think it hit $70,000.
73 today.
Yeah, and
Probably bounce down and then go back up. But
right, but then again, like we also heard what
that's just Bitcoin, by the way. There are millions of cryptocurrencies now,
right,
which is wild.
Yeah, but Bitcoin is
Hundreds of thousands, not millions. Yeah.
ooh, yeah, but Bitcoin is the one that like everyone I think has heard about. Like
It's the OG.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not Dogecoin, but
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's the one that people know about.
For sure. Once again, a different podcast.
Different
Lots
podcasts.
of
Yeah.
conversations. What are Joe Velazquez's? What are your visions, aspirations, plans for the future?
Yeah, I love what I do. It's a lot of fun, but
Great introduction.
it's a great introduction. I've done I've done my job for going on 2 years. It's probably like the reason I wake up is to actually go do this stuff. It's a lot of fun. It's a great time to go talk to people and learn about what's happening. And I mean, I remember driving around 7, 8, 9 years ago, and I just love looking at buildings and just understanding the economics of what's happening in and out of them.
Yeah.
Why does a retail tenant lease on King Street? Why does a industrial, tenant lease on, out in Somerville?
Right.
And it's a fun conversation to have. And there's always a good story behind it. And that's what I like to hear about. But I think as I progress, I may go for the promotion. I may stay in research. The other avenue is going towards a broker role. That is something, I used to do that and it didn't work out the first go round. So kind of hesitant on doing it for a second round, but it's a fun conversation to have.
With the right connections, though.
With the right connections. I'm in, I don't want to be anywhere other than CV. It's pretty much been the best company I've ever worked for.
What
It
does
is the company.
CBRE stand for?
Ooh, Caldwell Banker Richard Ellis. So,
Sure. Yeah,
yes,
got it.
got it. But yeah, I think
You
moving
didn't
on.
put you on the spot there.
You did.
It's a heck of an employee, CBRE.
Heard it from him.
Heard it first.
Heard it first. But
Hopefully not here first. Hopefully there were plenty of others that said.
I hope a lot of people like what I do,
Yeah.
or at least appreciate it. But I think just sticking to what I do right now, next couple of years, keep doing it. Afterwards, looking at brokerage, don't know what asset type. Tried my hand at multifamily, didn't work out. May try that again, but that's kind of where I'm at, and that's what I'm thinking.
Cool. I feel like with the research you're doing, you'll have a really good understanding of which direction you want to go in by that time.
I think so. Give it another 2 years, we'll see.
Love it. Well, Joe, I appreciate you hopping on the podcast tonight.
Thank you for having me.
This has been super enjoyable. We will do this again in the very
Yeah.
near future.
Perfect.